Hey there folks, welcome to my first video on the Starman channel. I am the Starman and I'm here today to debunk a flat earth conspiracy video that was presented to me on Twitter as evidence of NASA fakery. This is my first time making a video in response to someone's arguments, but I promised them I would do a full video debunk of their supposed evidence of NASA fakery, so here I am. I don't want the intro to run too long, so let's get right into it. This first clip claims to show evidence of graphic manipulation in a video taken from the ISS. This, of course, is not the case. All it is a simple fade cut from one shot to the next. I have the same clip from the original video right here, but in higher quality, and I want you to pay really close attention to two things. This spot here, and this spot over here. Did you catch that? I'm going to replay this clip, but I'm going to zoom in on these two sections and play it at half speed. Watch what happens to these two pieces of equipment as he supposedly disappears. You can clearly see that the two objects are moving slowly, but then fade out and back in a slightly different position. This clearly shows that it is a fade cut between two shots taken a few moments apart. It's nothing more than a transition between two clips. Let's move on to the next part of the video. This photo is a clear example of JPEG artifacts. Here's an image showing JPEG artifacts that look relatively similar to the artifacts you're seeing in the Apollo image. I'm not going to go into too much detail as to what exactly causes artifacts like this because it could be somewhat complex and I want to keep the video as short as possible. And I will include a link in the description below that describes it in more detail. However, it's basically just caused by compression of an image when it's saved in JPEG format. When this happens, non-essential data is discarded, which can result in noise around the edges of objects, which is exactly what we're seeing in this image. Now for the next clip. This image is a composite, and that isn't a secret. The square you're seeing is most likely just from the different layers that were placed to create the full color image. Here's a series of images showing what was done to create the color image. The original image was taken in black and white, as black and white images are sharper than color images. They then took three separate images through red, green, and blue filters and layered those images to create a full color image of Earth from the moon. I'm going to put a full article explaining exactly how the image was created in much more detail in the description of this video. Let's move on. For every Apollo mission, 2 astronauts landed on the moon, while 1 remained in lunar orbit in the command module. First of all, this clip is from Apollo 14, so that is not Neil Armstrong, it was Alan Shepard, and the video was taken by Ed Mitchell, who was already on the surface of the moon. This clip is from Apollo 17, so they're clearly not even trying to remain consistent with where they get their clips from. The lunar takeoff was filmed remotely from a camera mounted on the Lunar Roving Vehicle, or LRV, and it was controlled remotely from mission control. This shot was attempted on both Apollos 15 and 16. Here's the attempt from Apollo 15. The camera didn't move at all, so there wasn't much to see. Here's the video from Apollo 16. The camera did move this time, but the timing was off, so you don't see much of their ascent. Apollo 17 was the only one where they got the timing right, which is why the Apollo 17 video is so much more popular than the other two. I honestly don't even know what this clip is supposed to be showing. They claim it shows a cameraman in a diving suit, but I don't see any indicators that suggest it's a diving suit at all. The suit looks pretty bulky when you freeze on this shot here, where the cameraman's legs are clearly visible. In this shot, you can clearly see they're not wearing anything related to diving, such as fins, a scuba tank, a scuba mask, anything. This is a spacesuit. It's the other astronaut on the EVA filming. I wasn't able to find a source for this specific spacewalk, which brings me to a point I want to make just in general about conspiracy videos like this. They never include any sources. These videos are always designed specifically to have no context and no sources. The whole point is that they're made to trick and deceive people into believing a nonsense conspiracy theory. The creator of these videos know that most people will not want to spend hours finding sources and context, so they'll likely take all of these clips at face value and simply believe NASA's faking their content. But unfortunately for them, I'm not most people. I'm the Starman, and I'm here to expose their lies. Now that that's out of the way, let's continue with the video. Honestly, this doesn't even look like an air bubble underwater. Anyone who's seen an air bubble underwater knows this is not an air bubble. Although it really could be anything. A chip of paint, a little bit of ice or other debris kicked up off the surface of the space station. This short clip honestly could have been left out entirely. It's not conclusive evidence of anything, so I'm just going to move on. With the poor quality of this clip, there's honestly no way to know what we're looking at. We can't even tell from this clip if there's a person there or if it's just something inside the airlock. There isn't much to say without having the source for the video either. You can call me lazy for not going through the trouble of finding the source, but there have been 267 spacewalks on the ISS and plenty of them have been live streamed or recorded in some way. Each stream or video are several hours long, and I honestly just don't have the time or patience to find it, so I'm gonna move on. The claim they're trying to make here is that this video was simply taken in something like a zero-G plane, or the Vomit Comet as it's sometimes known. Of course, the reason the clip is cut short is because it was simply a boost of the vehicle they were in, so they got pushed into the back wall. I looked all over the place trying to find the original source but could not find it anywhere, so I decided to post it on Twitter and tag a fellow aerospace enthusiast who had a little more knowledge of the early space program. He didn't know either, so he reposted it, and in only a half hour, I had the original video, and I want to say thank you to Ben here for finding it. Here is the full video taken from the space shuttle, not the ISS, as originally claimed in the video. The reason the astronauts were pushed into the back wall is because of a burn of the shuttle's orbital maneuvering system, or OMS, and you can clearly see they are still in zero-G even after being pushed into the back wall. This one's pretty simple, so I won't spend too much time on it. That is the communication antenna on their EVA pack reflecting sunlight. Here is a much higher quality image where the antenna is clearly visible. It was very thin and reflective, so it was near impossible to see in the lower quality video. You can see it even clearer in this image where it is reflecting more light. Let's move on. This clip claims to show someone pass by in the background with a harness on. While I do admit that it looks a little weird, there's a problem. The line isn't taut. If this was a harness they forgot to edit out, the line would be holding the person's body weight and it would be, held pretty tight. It's not. It's more likely that he was just wearing some kind of belt or something that just stuck out a little. It also doesn't help that you can't see any kind of wire, so if they forgot to edit out the wire, why isn't it visible? Once again, they're claiming the astronaut's on wires. But you can clearly see he's just trying to catch himself after doing a flip. He goes to catch himself on the area above him with his hand, but he gets his footing, so he just does a fun pose for the kids who are watching, and that's about it. He also does that backflip pretty slow. If this person was in Earth gravity, there is no way he would be able to somersault so slowly, even if he was being held up by wires. For this next part, they show a graphic depicting low Earth orbit, followed by this.
A set of crewed flights will test and prove the systems required for exploration beyond low Earth orbit.
In this part, they showed a bunch of clips of NASA employees, astronauts, and of course the president talking about going beyond low Earth orbit and how we don't have a way to go beyond low Earth orbit right now. I only included the one of President Obama saying it for the sake of shortening the video a little, but they were all correct. At the time the videos were taken, SLS hadn't been built yet, and there was in fact no human-rated heavy lift rocket available to send people beyond low Earth orbit. They were simply ignoring the context as a way to segue into another segment where they deny the moon landings.
It was all recorded on these telemetry tapes. So where is this hard evidence?
I haven't seen anything that indicates the telemetry data is even in existence, and as I said, even if we had it, we don't have the machines to play it back.
I'm honestly not sure why they chose telemetry data as the piece of evidence that would confirm the moon landings. There were over 10,000 images taken during the Apollo missions, as well as retroreflectors left on the moon by astronauts that people use all the time, and even images of the landing sites taken by lunar orbiters. If that isn't enough to convince somebody we landed on the moon, then I'm not sure what telemetry data would prove to them. There's really not much to say for this whole segment, as they continued on this point for a while, despite the fact that it's basically irrelevant.
Closer look at the supposed two images provided from NASA of Jupiter. Here's the problem again, 2016, 2014. What's the difference here? Well, the difference is they added the supposed auroras on the north.
Here, I froze the frame where he brings up side-by-side images of Jupiter with and without the aurora. I admittedly was stumped by this until I simply looked up the source of the image. The image with the aurora had the following caption on the NASA website. This is an image composite of two different Hubble observations. The auroras were photographed during a series of Hubble Space Telescope imaging spectrograph far ultraviolet light observations taking place as NASA's Juno spacecraft approaches and enters into orbit around Jupiter. The full color disk of Jupiter in this image was separately photographed at a different time by Hubble's Outer Planet Atmospheres Legacy or OPAL program. The image is admittedly a composite made with a previously taken image of Jupiter. The reason it looks the same is because they are the same image. It's just an aurora composited with the 2014 image. Honestly, there's not even anything to debunk here. Their argument is actually that the planet Pluto is fake because there's a portion of it that looks a little tiny bit like the cartoon character Pluto. That's it. That's their entire argument. They do not go into anything else. They just simply show an overlay of cartoon character Pluto over the planet Pluto and move on as if that's supposed to be evidence of something. I only left it in, honestly, because I thought it was hilarious. This was a time-lapse taken by, I believe, JAXA's Himawari 8 satellite. This satellite is in a geostationary orbit, meaning it does not move relative to the ground. The fact that you're seeing a day-night cycle clearly shows that the Earth is rotating and is not stationary in this video. I'm not sure what satellite took this video, but this one is pretty clearly moving and is not in the geostationary orbit. There isn't much to say without any source though, so I'm going to move on.
So I keep digging a little bit deeper, and I finally get underneath this cloud cover here, and a few images pop up. And I say, oh, images, what are they? Well, this is what you got, which I'm sure that looks familiar to you, right? Looks just like the pictures they give us of Mars.
After that clip, they show this image of a truck with a NASA logo on it. Then they show this rover. Now, this rover looks nothing like any of the rovers that have actually landed on Mars, so it clearly isn't a fake Mars rover made to trick people. The actual rovers on Mars are able to take pictures of themselves, and we know what they look like, and they look nothing like that. The fact is, they simply test components for rovers in the environment on Earth that most closely resembles the surface of Mars. The components need to be tested before being sent to another planet. After it's on Mars, you can't bring it home if something doesn't work, so they test them in the most similar environment they could find on Earth. That is all. They also make this claim that it isn't possible to land on planets because all planets are stars. To that I say, buy a telescope or reach out to a friend who has one, find a local observatory, and you can clearly see that they aren't stars. We can see planets like Jupiter through a telescope, and you can clearly see that it's a solid rotating body, even over the course of just one night. In the case of Jupiter especially, you can even see the planet's moons, and if you're lucky enough, you may catch an eclipse. Like in this video here that I got from astrophotographer Andrew McCarthy, where you can clearly see an eclipse taking place. I'm going to include a link to his Twitter page where he shares content like this all the time. He has some really great stuff, and I highly recommend checking him out. So with that, I think we're all done and dusted for part 1 of this debunking video. I'm going to work on part 2 and get it released as soon as possible. Thank you so much for watching. Ad Astra.